Israel. Israel ranks 88 out of 180 on the Press Freedom Index. The Israeli media are free to be outspoken, which is rare in the Middle East. Nonetheless, despite the existence of independent media, journalists are exposed to open hostility from members of the government. Smear campaigns have been waged against media outlets and journalists by politicians with the help of their party and supporters, exposing the targets to harassment and anonymous messages and forcing them to seek personal protection. Journalists have also been subjected to military censorship, orders banning the coverage of certain subjects in private sector. So, those military censorship things include the mistreatment of the Palestinian people and the civilian murders and deaths conducted by the military, and private sector lawsuits designed to gag them. Because of self-censorship, there is little or no coverage of the reality of life in the Palestinian territories. Foreign freelancers often have difficulties in obtaining or renewing accreditation. The Israel Defense Forces often violate the rights of Palestinian journalists, especially when they are covering demonstrations or clashes in the West Bank or the Gaza Strip. 2 Palestinian journalists were killed by the IDF snipers, and dozens were wounded while covering the March of Return protests in the Gaza Strip in 2018. Many other journalists have been wounded while covering the protests that have been repeated every week since then. In the West Bank, the IDF have used live rounds to disperse protests, exposing reporters to the possibility of serious injury, and at least 3 Palestinian journalists have permanently lost the use of an eye in this way. Many others have fallen victim to Israel's defense system of administrative detention, under which they can be held indefinitely without formal charge and without notification of a lawyer, on the basis of confidential evidence that they are inciting violence or cooperating with terrorist organizations. The IDF have harassed or closed many Palestinian outlets in recent years for allegedly inciting violence, namely not rolling over and letting Israel boot them off their land.
Poggers.